To the Free American Exposition and Book Fair, I'm Clay Douglas, your host. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Michael S. Coffman is a respected scientist and ecologist. He's been involved in the ecosystem research for 25 years in both the academy and industry. He taught courses and conducted research in forest ecology and forest community dynamics, and has published a book on forest ecology classification in Upper Michigan and North Wisconsin, which is northern Wisconsin. He's been in, that's become the standard for classification in the region. He also assisted the U.S. Forest Service in developing an ecological land classification system for each of the national forests in Region 9. Until recently, Dr. Coffman was a manager for a leading forest and paper products company in the United States. During this tenure, he chaired a multi-million-dollar research effort into the impacts of man on our nation's forest. In this and other related responsibilities, he became intimately involved in such national and international issues as acid rain, global climate change, wetlands, cumulative effects, and biological diversity. Dr. Coffman is currently president of Environmental Perspectives Incorporated, where he provides professional guidance and training in environmental problems and conflicts so that appropriate solutions can be developed. He served on 2 select U.S. Forest Service Region 9 roundtables on biodiversity and socio-economic issues, the only scientist to serve on both. He also successfully led the effort to stop the ratification of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And without further ado, Dr. Michael Coffman.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm glad to be with you this afternoon, all the way here down in Texas. This month I have been in Los Angeles, Texas, Idaho, Massachusetts, and now back to Texas. And it's a delight to be here. It's been a very busy month, one in which I hope people are beginning to learn and understand what is going on in this world so that they can begin to take some positive action. Actually, I'm in the process of writing yet another book. This will be my 4th book that's going to go into some of the cultural side of what has happened to help you to frame a better message when you're trying to talk to your friends and neighbors, because we have not been doing a very good job communicating this to our friends and neighbors, and it's one of the things that we really need to do more effectively. That should be out probably about 3 or 4 months, and right now the working title on it is Plundering by Control Through Law, for Control Through Law. And it's going to go in the legal background, the understanding the philosophy of the Constitution and how it's being corrupted, so that you can begin to explain the Constitution to people who have no concept of what the Constitution is trying to tell them and protect them at the same time in a convincing way that they can begin to start thinking of what is really happening. We'll be talking about education, be talking about the environment, and actually at the end of the concluding part of the book, I'll explain a little bit more at the concluding part of my talk here today. I'm going to be spelling out a way that we can more effectively confront this agenda at the local level, because we've already implemented it and it works. I got started in this. I'm a scientist. By what Clay introduced me is, I have 30 years now in research science, have been primarily doing work in the arena of environmental action, ecosystems analysis, classification, and a variety of other things. And I was leading a multi-million-dollar research effort in the 1980s when it became very obvious to me that there was an agenda behind what was going on in the environmental community. And it was at that time that I began to actually look into what it was that was driving this agenda. And when I found out, I went into the state of shock, like much of you have, at the realization of the magnitude, of the enormity of this agenda, this international agenda to control basically the world and establish a world government. The most recent book that I published is the book of The Birth of World Government, the title of this particular talk today. And it defines and really goes into what has happened in the past 10 years during the 1990s and early 2000s of what this agenda has been able to accomplish, because really we do have a world government already in place. It's just not been legalized yet, and that's going to come in the next couple of years. So we need to be well educated in understanding what is behind here so that we can begin to take, when it's finally obvious, on 9/11 was the first major step into the explanation of what is happening on the international level, that it will help you to explain to your friends and neighbors that it's not by accident that these things are happening, it's by design. And it was in the 1990s when I was still working on this and putting it all together, I began to see the magnitude of what is happening, and it's incredible, as most of you know. I'm going to only talk a little bit today about one aspect of it, something that most Americans don't realize, have no idea. 9/11 wasn't the first time that we had a threat of terrorism in the United States in a magnitude that would have killed, in this case, perhaps hundreds of thousands of Americans rather than thousands. I'm going to really dwell on that particular aspect of it today. It's interesting that the American people, if you look over the entire world, are the only people that really do not understand that we're having the birth pains of a world government. You go to Europe and you talk to Europeans, and they generally have an understanding. They may not have a specific understanding, but they have an understanding of the fact that we are working towards this world government, and the European Union is just one of the first steps in this process. If you go to Russia, you go to China, you go to any place else in the world, at least the leadership there has a very clear understanding, and they're not taking it laying down. It's causing tremendous frictions, global intrigue, enormous geopolitical consequences, and I'm going to be talking about those today. We only have about an hour to do so. I struggled to determine what it was I wanted to share with you today, because there is so much. I could probably talk for 8 or 10 hours straight if my voice would hold out, and explain to you the various sub-agendas going on within the major agendas and how they're affecting our freedoms and so forth, from property rights to you name it. I've been involved in. I certainly don't know everything. Some of you probably know some things I don't know. But the fact is that it's a huge agenda. This is one aspect of it. And to do that, I want to show you a series of slides so that you understand it's not my words that are saying this, that it's their words, and these are the things that happen. So if you'll excuse me for a moment, I'll step down in front of the stage here, and we'll begin. Okay, can you all hear me? One of the things that is very obvious to any of you that have not tried to do this and explaining what's going on is that you're hearing all kinds of denials that these things are actually happening. And it's just impossible. You cannot deny it. And one of the things that in the new book that I'm writing is structured it in a way that I'm not talking necessarily to you. You know all this stuff. I'm talking about your friends and neighbors in a way that they cannot deny that this is happening. And one of the things that is very curious in 1988 or 1981 is that David Rockefeller, one of the kingpins of this overall agenda, basically said that the world which we have worked to construct is threatened. What world? It's the global world that they're trying to put into place, the world government.